Good morning. It is Toni from the Fiberology Lab, and this is Coffee Chat. I have been starting this for about a week now, and we're still learning the ropes and what to do and what to expect. I wanted to come in every day from Tuesday to Friday and just touch base with everybody. But the fun thing in this has evolved into learning the quilting basics via me. That just means that there's lots of ways to learn. There's lots of options out there. And this is just one. These are just some of the things that I have learned and I'm sharing it. And I teach it in my Quilting 101 class that I would normally do in a brick and mortar that I haven't set up yet. So I figured I'd give it out there. It's free. Join our Mighty Networks where I will offer PDFs as well with each one of these sessions. So we are still at the beginning stages of this um, of this session, this learning how to quilt. So if you come on in, say hi and where you're from so I can acknowledge your time. Hopefully you can hear me. Good morning, Miss TC. I'm hoping you can hear me. I am set up in my home studio right now. So it might look a little, you might hear some sounds like a cat, maybe a child or two, because my grandbabies live with me. And so I'm just doing this from my home because I have to pack because I'm going to market tomorrow morning. So I had too many things here at the house that I wanted to do. So I figured I'll just do my coffee chat from the house. So we have gone over some basics for this Learning to Quilt series. I have posted a supply list on Notions. Yesterday, I talked a little bit about how to pick out your fabrics. And if you're in our Mighty Networks community, we also had some, I think it was Denise, posted a picture on how she took a grayscale picture of the fabrics that she picked out. And that's another great tool that I kind of talked over a little bit yesterday, but it's a great tool as well to help you pick out your fabrics. Good morning, Miss Christine. Good morning, Darlene. How are you? Good to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. I hope you are doing okay. So today we're going to talk about terminology. And the reason my eyes are going all over the place, I'm trying to find the camera spot. I'm using my phone so I can use my computer to talk to you because I have a list of stuff to share. Now I am going to put up PDFs shortly after this live video, in the Mighty Networks under Quilting Basics with Coffee Chat. It's a group that we have curated. And if you have not joined our Mighty Networks, I highly encourage you to do so. It is, I'm trying to find the happy link that I can run on the bottom. There it is. It is friendsfibersfun.club. It's a clubhouse. We have a lot of fun in the clubhouse. So you can join that and you'll get all the PDFs for this series as we go along. So who else is coming? Oh, good, darling. I'm glad you're well. Hey there, Christine. Hey, Anna. How are you? Good to see all my friends and fiberologists, fellow fiberologists. So today's Quilting Basics 101, we're going to talk about terminology. There is so many terminologies, and I wanted to just really kind of hit the high levels of the things that we will talk about in this series, because not all the terminology is going to be talked about. And if I miss something that you think is important, please share it, because actually, let me ask this question. What was the one weird word when you started to quilt and you were like, what the heck does that mean? Or what does this acronym mean? Just curious, what are the weird ones that you might have remembered back in the day when you started quilting? And even if you started quilting last week, what was the one thing that was weird? I'm going to hopefully touch it. I've got a couple of the top few that I'm going to share. So let's see if anybody is responding. Obviously everyone can hear me, so that's a good sign too. And I know some people are working too. I won't tell if you won't tell. And if you still don't know how to put a comment on, make sure you have to be signed in. So you just sign into YouTube with if you have a Google account, it's really easy. Or, you have to create an account to sign in. That's how I'll see comments. Oh, HST. That's a good one. That's one on my list. I'll talk about that. And I hate typing out that all three words. I always use HST in a lot of my pattern designing too. So that's a good one, Christine. I'll talk about that. Oh, and WOF. Perfect. These are perfect things that I'll talk about today. So let's go through just some terminology, and I've kind of broken it up in 3 little sections. And the first thing is pre-cuts. And like I said, I have this PDF already made up. I'll post that in the group under our quilting basic group in our Mighty Networks. So pre-cuts, I'll be honest, pre-cuts back way back in the day, probably about 20 years ago, was only fat quarters. And if you don't know what a fat quarter, it's a fat quarter is a quarter yard of fabric, but it's cut differently off the bolt. So when we cut fabric off the bolts, we cut it like this. So like if it's a quarter yard, it's 9 inches over. And so what you'd get a fat quarter of is a half a yard, but it's cut up here on the fold. So it makes it 19 by 21 inches. That was the original pre-cut. But then Moda got very creative. Moda is a fabric company based out of Texas. I do not carry Moda. It's not that I don't like them. It's just not my style. But they really created the terms that we hear nowadays and are very actively using them in everything. So the first I'm going to just name them and I'm going to tell you what they each are. Oh, fat quarter. See, I think when I first heard fat quarter, I was kind of offended by it. Just saying. I'm just putting that out there. Just saying. But Moda's terms are crumbs, charms, layer cakes, jelly rolls, and honey buns. Those are their I think they're actually even trademarked. I'm not sure, but you notice if you buy these type of size pre-cuts from other companies, they've named them their own thing. So like jelly rolls are designer rolls for some some brands, or strips, or there are other things. So, but they've kind of created a standard for pre-cuts. So crumbs are 2.5-inch squares. Charms are 5-inch squares. Layer cakes are 10-inch squares. Jelly rolls are 2.5-inch strips width of fabric. WOF. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And honey buns are 1.5 inches. Charms I hear the most often being interchangeable. Like to me, when I think of a charm, it is anything that's a square. So a 6-inch square is a charm, or a 3-inch square is a charm. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're looking at things and you might be buying things, especially says Moda Charm Pack. That's going to be a 5-inch. But if you buy it from another company, it could be a 6 or 7, or, it tends to be an interchangeable word. So just keep that in mind if you're buying charms. And then some of the other pre-cut things you're going to hear is the fat quarter, which is FQ. Again, it's 9 inches by 21. And a fat eighth, which is what we call test tubes, are pre-cuts of 9-inch by 21 inch. So basically half a fat quarter. And then even a fat eighth is a fat 16th. Normally fat 16ths, you don't see a lot of them unless you're talking wool. So if you just start doing wool applique, or you start buying wool for different projects, they normally come in 16ths because you normally don't need a lot, and they tend to be a little more high priced. Hey there, Linda. Good morning to you. Good morning to you. So those are kind of our pre-cut terms. And I'm going to talk about how to shop for these things here in a minute too, because that's another common question I hear. Okay, so how do I shop for fabric? How do I purchase? How many do I need of everything? So I'm going to talk about that in a minute as well. So another couple common abbreviations. Christine nailed the first one on the head. WOF means width of fabric. And what that means is when you are cutting width of fabric, you're cutting against the grain, perpendicular to the selvage. I'll talk about the selvage in a minute too. But with the fabric, when we look at our fabric, so again, this is off a bolt. You see the selvage at the bottom. We're going to cut perpendicular to it, which means I should have thought this one. I didn't think this through. I should have put this on a second camera, but I didn't today. You're cutting from this selvage edge to selvage edge. That's the best way to say it. Selvage edge to selvage edge. And you're like, what is a selvage? Well, selvage is the seamed up edge of your fabric. This is a selvage. Even on hand dyes, everywhere, anywhere that the fabric is seamed up from the manufacturer, that's called the selvage edge. And that runs horizontal to the grain of your fabric. It's just some things you're going to have to learn a little bit. LHST is half square triangles. Those are my favorite block to build with, and we will be doing several of those in this project. So that's kind of why I make sure this term is there. The other term that kind of threw me for a loop, and I probably up until like 10 years ago, I've been quilting over 25, I think actually, maybe 30. Wow, I have to think about that. I don't have no idea how long I've been quilting. It's been a long time. I'm almost 30 years. Wow. Okay. Anyway, it's LOF. So if WOF is width, LOF is the length, and that's going along the selvage. And you'll see that term a lot in patterns that are telling you to cut your borders. It is encouraged for you to cut your borders on the length of the fabric because there's not a lot of stretch in it. When you cut on the width of fabric, there's a little bit of stretch, but then we all hear the word bias. And bias is when you cut at the 45-degree to the selvage, that gives a lot more stretch. So bias binding, if you're doing curving, you kind of want to cut towards that, the bias in the fabric. So those are some common abbreviations. Hey, Anise, good morning to you. Hope you're doing good. So other common terms that is a new quilter you might not recognize. Now, I think most of you are established quilters, but is binding. Binding is the finishing fabric you put over your edges of your quilt, which your quilt has a backing, a batting, and a top, which would also be called a quilt sandwich. You're going to see that a lot too in patterns. Make your quilt sandwich or quilt as desired. So a quilt sandwich is a top fabric, a batting, and a backing. And I'm going to talk about how we have to prepare those later on. Right now, we're just doing terminology today. Keep it simple. Keep it simple. I can go on squirrel moments and talk about everything really more in depth, but I'm going to use those opportunities in the time I teach you actually how to sew and how to prep things. And the other common term I put up here on my list is called raw edges. So if the selvage edge is the finished enclosed edge on the manufacturing, the raw edge is opposite, which means if you run your finger through a raw edge, so you'll see that a lot in patterns as well, like fold or match the raw edges together, or raw edge applique, which we're not going to do any of, but again, I'm giving you teasers because once we get the basics down, I'm going to do a little more intermediate style teaching after that point. So those are pretty broad, pretty simple based terminologies that you're going to hear often, and things that I will use actually over the next couple of weeks as we start really diving in and cutting and preparing our fabric, and also to make our blocks. So like I said, the PDF will be in our Mighty Networks if you want this to have as a reference tool or to help somebody else. The other thing I want to talk about today is how to shop for all this stuff that I just mentioned, especially pre-cuts. I get it all the time. So this is, again, my interpretation. And so just bear with me as I share this. And again, remember, I have over 25 years of experience. I'm almost 30 years. I think 2024 will be my 30th year in quilting. Common things, we always go to shops. We want to take a souvenir home. So what do? We buy fat quarters that you'll never use. So a couple of tips for buying fat quarters: buy them in a set of 6 to 12 pieces that will coordinate, because if you have a postcard pattern, which is one of our biggest things we carry, there's a lot of those that use anywhere from 8 to 12 fat quarters. So that's one way to shop. The other thing, think about fat quarters as a supplement to your stash. So you're going to do a scrappy quilt and you don't have enough reds in your scrap pile left over, maybe buy fabric that's red and fat quarters so you can supplement that. Another way is to use them for an apple where you only need a small piece. Or if you're going to purchase them for a theme style quilt, like think of I Spy quilts, or somebody loves cars and you just need to collect a bunch of little car fabrics. That's where fat quarters come useful and way for you to purchase differently. So just don't walk into a quilt store, well, I feel like I need to buy something, and just buy a random fat quarter without a purpose, because then you're going to end up with all these weird fat quarters when you start looking at your stash. So think of how to build your stash. Fat quarters are a great tool to build your stash, but just make sure you're kind of already thinking of a purpose for them. And that's kind of how I shop. I always look at fabric and say, okay, I love this fabric. What would I see it, even though I might not touch it for 20 years? We got to think like that sometimes. Although we end up with pieces, we get ready to use it and it's short. So a couple things regarding yardages. So you see a fabric, it's on super discount sale and you really like it. Or you're like, it's okay, but can I use it for a backing? If you want to think of purchasing your backing fabrics for, and I'm not talking Y backs, I'm talking 45-inch, well, 42 to 45-inch regular quilting fabric, which you can totally use for backing. I would look at anywhere from 5 to 7 yards if you get a good deal. That's when you would want to buy that, 5 to 7 yards. And that way you put it off to the side. And then if you use it for a project, bonus. If not, it's perfect for a backing. And that would be a backing up to a small queen size. Now, background fabrics, I know in my personal stash, background fabrics I am lacking of because I don't like light colors. I don't like creams. And you probably are the same way. We tend to buy things we like, which tend to be in that medium tone of color palette. But if you're going to look at a fabric and say, again, it's on sale, or, oh, this is a really cool cream or a really cool light gray or a really cool black, anything that you're going to use for background fabric in your taste, look at 3 to 4 yards of it, because then that gives you enough yardage on the most time to do a queen size quilt. And you're saying, I'll never sew a queen size quilt. Don't ever say never. Just it'll happen. And even if you only make one, you'll want that one fabric you have in your stash that you only have 2 yards of. So anytime you want background fabric, think at least 3 yards, possibly 4. Let me flip to my other screen real quick. Let's see. Hey there, Hope. Good morning to you. Oh, Christine's doing binding this week. Oh, no fun. Good for Mondo bags, right? Yes. They are totally. I'll talk about charms in a minute, but she was talking regarding fat quarters. They're perfect for Mondo bags as well, but I'm going to talk about charms in a minute. And Christine says, I always try to buy 12 fat quarters at a time. I can't figure out what to do with them. I go to pattern dip. Perfect. That's why I said the fat quarters are better to think of as a forward project. I'm going to go back to my screen with my notes. I'm going to be reading notes for a minute before I go back to the next thing. All right. So I talked about backgrounds. I talked about backing, focal prints. Now this is what gets me most of the time. I walk into a store and be honest, I do shop because I don't carry everything. I don't carry everything. Let's put it that way. And then I walk into the store, purple multicolor print. I love it. I immediately get 3 yards immediately because that gives me enough to build it onto a queen size border quilt and to have enough to sprinkle out. Now, if I really like it, and I think it might be something I want to use even for a backing, I won't get 5 yards. So if you find a focal point you are so in love with, get it, but make sure you get enough. Don't get a half yard or 1 yard because you'll regret it. You will regret it. That's my voice of regret going right there to you. I'm sorry, but yeah, you will want more if you find a focal point print you really like. In conjunction with that focal print, you want to make sure you get some coordinates to go with it, because even if you don't touch it for 3 to 5 years in your stash, you go to match it up, you're not going to have all the fun things that'll work with it. So I do encourage a 1 to 1.5 yard. I actually lean more towards 1.5 yard of at least 3 coordinating fabrics. And now I look at them like yesterday's colors. I get one light, I get one medium tone, and I get a dark tone that works with that focal fabric. So that's how I shop. And I know it looks and it sounds like, wow, that's a lot. But when that fabric talks to you, you want to make sure you have enough of it and you have something to play with it when you get to that point when you say, okay, I found the perfect pattern. Because, we can always find the perfect fabric first before we find the perfect pattern. I've learned you find that perfect pattern and find fabric for it, it doesn't work as easily. I don't know why that is, but I have learned that. So have I missed any other questions? I agree with multiple yards. When I first started, I did 1 yard, and now I've stashed a lot of, yeah. So Linda, your 1 yard pieces, you might want to try to put them together and make a bunch of fat quarter bundles or something. Maybe try to work it that way. Yep. It's as a beginner, we don't know. We just kind of, we're so excited. We want all the pretties. So and we don't want to overspend. We just want to get a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And then long term though, we realize, wow. So you don't have to think so much project oriented, which I do shop project oriented as well. But, reality is we build stashes. And when you build a stash, build it healthy so you don't have to have it sitting around, not be able to play with it later, or missing a piece. Coordinates are so important, Christine. Yep, they're so important. So going back to the charms a little bit. So one of the key things I do want to encourage, because I know, again, we'll walk into a shop and we'll buy a charm, or we'll see it on a live sale. Oh, that's a cute charm pack. I want that charm pack. 5-inch square charm packs, they go fast. They sell fast. They don't reprint them or recut them. So I encourage you to get, I hate to say this, at least three. At least three. If you look at charm pattern books with just the charm pattern blocks, like the 5-inch blocks, and I'm talking 5-inch, I'm not talking 10-inch yet. 5-inch blocks, or even the 2.5, I would get more of those. You want to get about 3 to 4, because even the books they have designed for them, they always say 3 charm packs of the same charm pack. Well, I only got one. So guess what you're making? You're going to make a table runner. But excuse me, postcard patterns, again, are awesome for that. They have lots of table runners just for 1 packs of charm packs. But if you really like the fabric and you got the 5-inch charm packs and you want to make a lap size quilt, I would say 3 to 4. If you want to make something bigger than that, you're going to need probably twice as many. Now, the 10-inch layer cakes, I love 10-inch layer cakes because you can totally make a large lap with a 10-inch layer cake all by itself and just adding a coordinate fabric. And if you think about how a 10-inch layer cake is 42 pieces of 10-inch squares, if you do those in quarters, that is 4 charm packs. So that's kind of where you come back to the charm packs. That's why you need 3 to 4 to make a really nice lap size quilt. Now, jelly rolls, you can buy those. I do recommend buying the 40-piece ones versus the half ones, unless you're making, again, runners or bags. But you don't want to get to go sit down and sew with a jelly roll pattern and find out you only have 20 and you really needed like 40 or 42. So those are some tips to keep in mind as well. Christine says layer cakes are more bang for your buck. I agree, they are more bang for your buck. And that's why I don't tend to sell 5-inch charms. I tend to sell 10-inch squares and strips, because the 10-inch layer cake, I again cut them in quarters, and I have 4 charm packs. So I agree, Christine. That's one of my things that I don't do here. So that is just my short list of terminology and a short concept of how to shop for fabric. Does anybody have any questions or anything else they want to share? Has anybody recently purchased fabric because you loved it and you don't have a plan for it yet? I'm curious. How did you shop? How did you just buy? Did you buy a 1-yard piece? What did you buy? I'm curious. So, and maybe I could help you kind of visualize how to add to it. So again, if you go into your stash, like Linda says, she has a lot of 1-yard pieces because that's what she thought it was a safe thing to do. Realizing as she's gotten into quilting, a lot of fabrics take a lot more, especially if you're doing my mystery quilts. I kill you guys with stash building, but if you build up a healthy stash now, you'll be able to enjoy those queen size mystery quilts. All right. So Christine's always buying. That's good. She's keeping our economy going, our quilting economy going. Christine, I don't know what you're talking about. So tomorrow, I will not be doing this, and I will not be doing it Friday either. I might still have coffee chat, but it might be from the airport. I haven't decided how I want to do that yet. But I will be traveling tomorrow to Houston, Texas. No, not to see the World Series. I'm going to Quilt Market. It's a trade show market for quilt shop owners and online shop owners to help look at the new stuff, up and coming stuff for next year. I've got some great suggestions. If you would like me to visit something specific, let me know. I've heard of poppy cotton is something I have to look at. Never heard of them before. So I'm looking those up, and I'm going to look at some new designers. I'm not just fabric designers, but some pattern designers that I can bring in and introduce you to. Yeah, if you like the mystery quilts, the VIP is the place to be. I reopened that up, and we do a quarterly mystery quilt every quarter. So we do clues every 2 weeks in that group. Thanks, Linda, for that shout out. I will not be here tomorrow. I will probably not be here Friday or Monday. So on Tuesday with our next session. Our next session is I forgot what it is. Next session, I think, is pressing. That's what it is. We are going to learn to press our fabric, not iron our fabric. I'm going to tell you some tips and tricks and what kind of irons I enjoy using. And again, just remember, I'm not a quilt police. This is just works best for me. I encourage you to try new things and see what eventually works good for you. So if nobody has any other questions, you can always leave them if you're watching on the replay. I appreciate that as well. Just make sure you put questions in the comments, or you can always ask us over in Mighty Networks group as well. I'm excited. Now I have to go do laundry and pack. But you're going to see a lot of videos from me, probably on Facebook and on YouTube over the next couple of days as I do live interviews with my friends and maybe future product that I'll bring into the shop. You guys have a great Wednesday, and reach out if you have any questions, info@fiberologylab.com. And remember, we are friends, fibers, and fun.